DPS will be chained to a support. So once the chain debuff actually appears on your bar, we had DPS run northeast and supports run southwest, using the pathways that aren't blocked by the wind AoEs. The boss will shortly after begin charging Legitimate Force, a back-to-back half-room AoE. Look for the hand that gets raised up first and dodge that before dodging whichever one was raised second. This attack is not lethal, mind you, and it's generally advised not to risk dying to solve it if you don't have to. That's not important here, it's easy here, but later on there's a mechanic that I'm in the exact same spot, so you'll just need to stand out of them. We just sidestep our individual AoEs after they go off with the start. The line I showed at the start, we just did DPS tank healer from the edge of the arena inward with group 1 on the left and group 2 on the right, like I have on the screen right now. This isn't essential, but it's not a movement heavy mechanic regardless. We just sidestep our individual AoEs after they go off with the space. You can also find overlapping a middle of the room, but into the gravity well will raise you off. Get ready to group 1 handle the west platform. Also use those later for consistency. Once the towers are soaked, 2 random players on each platform will be targeted with an attack. One player will be tethered with a prey marker, the other is given a big ol' AoE. These 2 players should go into the air via the gravity well in order to position. The tether should run towards the front of the room off to the side, while the player with the AoE just sidesteps towards the edge of the arena, also while in the air. Please note that the edge is still lethal in the air. We had a loose spread with the leftmost unmarked player getting the front tower and the rightmost yellow, sometimes smoother. All 8 players will be targeted. Everyone should be airbound as it makes the movement for the next mechanic much smoother. All 8 players will be targeted with meteor drops. Each hit will leave a meteor behind if dropped on a platform, dealing some while you're airborne. We set up this to explode. Note that the second set of meteors are thrown off the sides. Light parties should return to their respective platforms and return to the ground. At this point, the boss will begin casting Weighty Blow. This will target a random player on the platform and attempt to hit them with a lethal attack. However, standing just barely behind a meteor will cause the meteor to block the hit and explode. We just started from the frontmost meteor and, as a team, walked backwards into each meteor to blow up all 4 on each side. The reason we use the L shape here is because if we put the final meteor in a direct line to the back of the platform, it could just make getting behind it a bit spottier. So we eliminated that by putting the meteor to the side. If there are any meteors remaining on the platforms when the World Shatter cast comes out and the arena goes back to normal, it's going to explode and you're not going to be very happy. After that World Shatter and another set of tank busters will be the Coronation mechanic. This will summon 4 line AoEs, each tethering to 2 players. These players can then move the AoE with its movement based on the lateral or longitudinal distance the tether players are from it. Don't worry, you don't have to think about any of that because we have some nice easy positions for you. Each player, simply look at the line AoE you're tethered to. If you're tethered to the left side of it, stand directly on the cardinal that line AoE started on. So if you're the left tether on the northern AoE, stand directly north, east to east, etc. If you're the player tethered to the right side of the AoE, go to the corner clockwise of it. So the right side of the north AoE would go to the northeast corner, the east AoE to the southeast, etc., etc. This will safely dodge every line AoE. After which every player is also going to get a large spread marker, but you'll already be spread out with these positions as well. Just ensure every player is topped off, and this should resolve easy peasy. Next is Absolute Authority. Upon the skill being cast, one role will be given 4 flare debuffs and one player on the other role a split damage AoE. Your goal is to put the flares in the corners of the arena and have any non-flares meet in the middle for the stack AoE. Now, while I am going to detail what I think is the intended strategy for the mechanic, there is just one really easy way to solve it that just requires a bit more raid mit. So the split damage AoE doesn't give a magic bone, so you can actually stack all 4 flare markers in the split damage AoE, move together as a group, and then with just a decent amount of raid mit, you can just survive and then you don't have to do all the movement I'm going to describe to you as what I think was the intended method. I think PF is probably going to land on this because it doesn't require a crazy amount of mit, but in the off chance that PF doesn't just go for this stack everyone version of the mechanic, I'm also going to detail it and show you the normal way. I don't know what they'll do, but at the very least, here's both of them. We started everyone dead center, with melees and tanks going toward the boss while the ranged and healers went back, dropping baited AoEs all along the way. Group 1 players will then split off and go west once they're comfortably towards the edge of the platform, while Group 2 players go east. Now the flares should get in the corner while the non-flares all head to the middle once you do this split up. Once the flares and stack AoE go off, every player will have an isolation AoE over their head, meaning you need to stand on at least one other player to prevent the effects. In order to make it easier for the flares, we just had the melee and ranged group each meet up halfway between the middle of the room and their respective partner's flare. So the group 1 melee and tank would meet up midway, group 1 range and healer. You can see me doing it on the screen right here. Obviously, if you have triple melee, triple range, just agree on positioning ahead of time for this. After that's going to be a knockback coming from the north side of the room. Everyone could just step up to avoid this, but you can also knockback resist it, so do whichever you want. Now we're on to the last major mechanic of this phase, the Ice Mode Virtual Shift. This will start all of the players on a narrow middle platform. Here, we immediately break up into DPS forward and support towards the back, and make a short lineup of D1 through D4 from left to right, and main tank, off tank, H1 and H2 left to right in the back. Law of Ice will force the player to keep moving are from it. Don't worry, you don't have to think about any of that. Group 1 players will then split off, satisfies just fine. Player to be knocked off, and if a player